Welcome to another episode of Chad's Chat. Join Chad Chilius and me, Dax Castro, where each week we wax poetic about document accessibility topics, tips, and the struggle of remediation and compliance. So sit back, grab your favorite mug of whatever, and let's get started.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Chad's Chat podcast. Today's podcast is sponsored by Chad's Training and Consulting. If you'd like your company announced during our podcast introduction, consider sponsoring our podcast transcript. My name is Chad Chilius. I'm an Adobe Certified Instructor as well as Director of Training Solutions and Principal at Chad's Training and Consulting.
And my name is Dax Castro. I am Director of Media Productions over here at Chad's Training and Consulting. And Chad and I are both certified as accessible document specialists. And if you are more interested in what that is or what that means, head on over to accessibilityassociation.org/certifications or membership and become a member of the IAAP. You actually can become a member, and there's a whole chat feature and a forum, and you get to meet lots of people. And it's a really great environment to really chat with some of the best minds in accessibility out there. I really do enjoy having that membership.
I would totally agree, Dax. I mean, there are some really good accessibility discussions over at the IAAP, both about document accessibility, web accessibility, video accessibility. Like, it really runs the whole gamut. And I really do think it's a really valuable resource. So definitely worth, the membership, worth spending some money and being part of that organization.
Yeah. And they do have speakers. They have, there's online webinars that happen quite a bit. They have an education training database and a speakers bureau. You and I are listed in that speakers bureau. And it's really is a great way. And you can join as a corporation or as an individual. I mean, it's a couple $100 a year. If you're a student, it's like less than $60 a year. But definitely I feel like there's good value in being a member of IAAP. So yeah, feel free to head on over there. Chad, today, I think we'd love to talk about a program that we're seeing more and more and more of as people are generating more digital content. And that is Canva, right?
Yep.
And Canva is one of those programs where, bless their hearts, they're trying. And it used to be just a couple months ago that there was no accessibility tags whatsoever in anything created in Canva. And we actually had a conversation with some of the guys over there at Canva, some of the people there, and said, hey, here's what's going on. Here's what we're seeing. We're getting a lot more people creating stuff, and they're asking us, how do we make this Canva document accessible? And Chad, how did that conversation go?
Well, before I dive into that, I just want to explain to our listeners that Canva is a browser-based design platform, right? I don't want to call it an application, but it's think about it as sort of like InDesign on the web, right? Via a browser, you could create your own account, and it allows you to create all these different products, and it actually really is quite interesting. And you are able to do some pretty nice designs using the product. But one of the challenges, as Dax has explained, is that in the early days of Canva, you are able to export to a PDF out of Canva, but the result was a PDF with 0 tags whatsoever. As Dax had said, we had a discussion with some of the folks over there at Canva and explained like how important it is that, hey, if you're making PDF files, we need them to be tagged. And we recently discovered that Canva has made a change, right? They've upgraded their platform. And now when you export PDFs, there are tags in there.
Yep.
Right. And so that, of course, is step one, right? Step one of accessibility is we need tags. But as WCAG Info and Relationships tells us, that not only do we need tags, but we need the tags to be appropriate for the elements that the tags are applied to.
Yep.
And what we're discovering is that, again, it's progress, but the tag structure from Canva is
a mess. I'm going to say it. I'm going to rip the Band-Aid off, Chad. It's a mess.
I was trying to be politically correct. I was trying to choose my words carefully, but yeah, it's an absolute mess.
But you know what, Chad, you say something all the time. Some accessibility is better than no accessibility. And I want to give kudos to Canva, because Canva, they went from nothing to something, and that's great. And now there's some talks about improving that. It's, you gotta start somewhere. And if it just means you're doing a little bit, do a little bit. And we say this for everybody. Add headings and use alt text. Two very basic things in your document can wildly improve the level of accessibility of your content. And it's not very hard.
Yep.
Canva's issue is a little bit deeper. It's about how the technical issue of this document is structured. Word is so much, everybody would agree that Word and InDesign are the economy car and the Ferrari, right? They're two completely different things. Both get you down the road, right? Canva, to me, is a lot like Publisher versus InDesign.
Yeah.
It does a lot of things very simply. It's not designed to be this accessibility tool. And so when you're trying to give a unique space where you can drag and drop anything into any area on the page, have any font, really have creative freedom, that's much different than a Word doc where everything's very linear and things have a very structured order. So it's understandable that Canva's having some issues with how that content is being exported as an accessible PDF. But I believe they're going to get there. But for our listeners, I think the big takeaway is right now, if you're creating content in Canva, realize that you're going to have to spend a good amount of time stripping that document down and tagging it from scratch.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm with you, Dax. I mean, I think the fact that we now have tags out of Canva is a great step forward, but I also feel, and again, I'm paraphrasing here, but I feel like what happened was the developers turned on the checkbox on the back end that says generate tags. And that's as far as they got. What I'd really love to see them do now is create some meaningful connections between the elements in Canva and the tags. Because in Canva, there's literally a command that says create new heading. Cool. Right. When I do that, make sure it's a heading tag. You know what I mean? At least give me that, I think the figures are output as figures. That's good. I don't know if Canva allows me to add alt text to an image. I'm gonna have to take a look at that. I don't think I got that far in my testing, but that's something I should definitely take a look at. But we had said to the folks at Canva when we spoke to them previously, we said, like, you guys are in a very unique situation. I mean, your product is becoming incredibly popular with a very large user base.
Right.
And if you could actually make it so that when they spit out a PDF that it was reasonably tagged, that's huge.
Yeah.
That is a really huge step. So, and I think we have we're working on having another call with the folks at Canva, and I'm really looking forward to that, looking forward to talking to them about, what they can do to improve the performance and the tagging, in those PDF files. So I did just do a quick test in Canva, and as far as I could tell, there's no way to add alt text to an image. Again, I've been using Canva for all but an hour, at this point in time, because I just wanted to create a basic document and do a little bit of testing. But from what I could see, there's no way to add alt text. So, those are the things, those I think are the feedback topics that I think are worth, letting the folks at Canva know about.
Yeah, no. And the good thing is that they are listening, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and that's really great because so many organizations, they just go, yep, we'll put that on our radar. And you're like, okay, what does that mean? And
well,
then
the
it's
translation is we're not gonna do anything.
right. So absolutely kudos to them for doing something. So
yeah, honestly, like I'm looking forward to seeing Canva grow. Right. I'm
Right.
really looking forward to seeing the progress and really looking forward to seeing what they can do to make this better.
Yep.
Cool. So the other thing we wanted to talk about today, Dax, was figures, images, right? So figures is the generic term in a PDF, and that includes photos, charts, graphs. Basically, any graphic element is a figure in a PDF. And one of the questions that we had gotten in the PDF Accessibility Facebook group was about inline figures versus non-inline figures, right?
I think it stems from in Microsoft, when you run the Microsoft Accessibility Checker, it tells you that if you don't have your images in line, it tells you that's an error. And the reason it tells you that's an error is because it used to be that when you placed a floating text box or you placed an image, it was just kind of placed in the ether sphere. It wasn't really placed anywhere that was specific. Now, Microsoft places it with an anchor. It's anchored somewhere. And that's the big distinction. The problem is the people who fixed the anchor part didn't tell the people who wrote the checker that now it's okay. And so you still get this warning that your images must be inline. But if you test it with a screen reader, you will find that it does anchor the object where it's supposed to be. You just have to make sure that where it anchored it is where you intended it to anchor. And that's the important part.
Precisely, because the purpose of the anchor is to tell, well, the fundamental purpose of the anchor is to give the image a place to live.
Right.
From an accessibility standpoint, the fundamental reason is that you're telling it, I want it to be read at this specific location. Right. So, you typically will anchor it like above or below a heading. That way it'll read the heading, then the figure, and then the body of that section.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, Word has really improved that, because it used to be a lot harder to make that happen. Like in Word, it almost used to be inline or nothing. Yep. But now it's like, no matter what, you're anchoring it somewhere. And then depending on the layout options, right, where you could tell it to like wrap the text around it or all that stuff. You still have the ability to then say, okay, I want it positioned over here, but it's really anchored at this specific spot,
Right.
And that is really helpful.
The problem with that, though, is that it moves text around differently. So if I have in my header or footer, I want to put my logo in a very specific spot, I really only have, when it's inline, I am bound by the rules and margins of my page. If my text is left justified, or if let's say you had your business name on the left and the logo on the right? You can't have it inline and have that logo be on the right unless you set a tab stop to move it all the way over to that spot. What typically people will do is place a table in the header footer and then put text on one side and the logo on the other, right? Which causes its own set of issues. But so this is the problem. Imagine it's not in the header footer and it's somewhere in the body, and all of a sudden you use inline, your text goes all over the place. Unless you're really an expert user at Word and understanding all the controls for how to manipulate your text and columns and column breaks and all of that, it creates a big burden on the designer to have that image be inline to satisfy the checker and keep the layout that you want, which is why people just use that not inline feature so that they can just place it wherever they want. Right. And that's really where all of this stems from. The good thing is Microsoft has fixed how that is accomplished now, and it absolutely puts it in the right place. The problem is the checker still says, hey, that object doesn't have a property of inline, so therefore it's wrong, right?
Right.
And we don't have this problem inside InDesign, right?
Well, we do, Dax. I mean, we actually do have this problem because in InDesign, when you're dealing with flowing text, right? When text is flowing from page to page to page to page, the only way to get a figure to be positioned at a specific location within that text is to anchor it.
Mm-hmm.
And by anchoring it, what InDesign will do is it will put, I believe, a section tag or a div tag. I can't quite remember, but basically what happens is the figure now is inside of the paragraph in the tag structure of the PDF.
Right. So you have a P with a nested figure tag inside it, right?
So fundamentally, that's not a problem, right? However, if we're getting down to brass tacks, right, the pack checker could flag that as a problem. The pack checker is going to give you an error, inappropriate use of a figure structure element.
Right. It'll give you that warning. That's that yellow triangle, and it's the warning of possible inappropriate use.
Yeah.
And in actuality, we get that all the time for anything that is nested inside something else.
Unless on that figure you have specified that it is an inline object.
Right, because a figure in itself is a block level element. So maybe we should step back a bit. So there are two states that an object can have. It can be inline or block, right? Inline, a block level element, is a first level element. It is the parent element. So usually the only time you have your document tag, right? And then you might have a section or an article tag as a container, but anything inside those is considered a block level element. And then if you have a block level element like a P tag, right? And you have a figure inside a P tag, that means it's inline. It's a subordinate. It's a child of that P tag. And so when it's in that nested situation, it has to have that placement value set to inline. And unfortunately, InDesign doesn't really do that. It doesn't set the placement value, right?
It could, right? I mean, again, programmatically, they totally could fix this quite easily, right?
Right.
By just saying like anytime a figure is anchored, make it inline, right? Just point, period, dot, exclamation point, right? There's never a question. The problem is, though, that I think the default output value is that it's a block level element. And that's why you get the inappropriate use of a figure structure element, because it's like, wait, the figure is a block level element inside of another block level element. I don't like that.
Right.
And if you change the placement to be inline, well, that resolves the problem. No big deal. But conversely, like if you do change the figure to inline, but then you put it as a top level tag, you're also going to get an inappropriate use because now it's expecting it to be block, but it's set to be inline. Yeah. So, I know a lot of users, a lot of our listeners might also be struggling with, how do I know whether it should be block or whether it should be inline? I could tell you it comes with experience. And I don't know if I want to try to make it this simple, but pretty much if you've got a tag at the first level of your tag structure, like a tag underneath the document tag, it's always going to be block. But if you ever put one of those items as a child of another item, then it has to be inline. I think, do you think I could summarize it that way? Is that
kind of? I think the caveat there is section tags don't have a level, right?
Yeah.
So if you have section, part, article, section, part, div, any of those as your first level item, ignore those, right? Yeah. They don't have a placement level. So if a figure sits inside a section tag, you might look at that and think, oh, it's supposed to be inline because it's the child of the section. But that's really it's the exception, because container tags have no inherent structural value. They're just there to help you group objects in the tags tree currently. Right. That may change in the future, but currently that's the way it is. So you just kind of have to ignore section, article, part, any of those things, and then go, okay, anything here in that first level below that is block level. And anything inside of a paragraph tag, a formula tag, a block quote tag, anything that is normally has a block level element designation, anything inside those is considered inline, right? Yep. And so you just have, the simple way to think about this, guys, is if you see that yellow triangle inside a pack and it says possible inappropriate use of whatever, go find that element in the tags tree and change the placement to the other thing.
Change it to the other option, right?
Right?
Yeah.
And
that's a really good way of pointing, of looking at it. Now, you know what, Dax? This kind of makes me think of another topic that might be worth talking about, just a slight segue. And that is the topic of those container tags, right? And you had mentioned like container tags really have no, first of all, container tags, which include article, section, div, part, they have no fundamental value, and they are not voiced by assistive technology.
Right.
So you could kind of like pretend they're not there. However, I work with a lot of clients who are intimidated by the long list of tags in the tags pane.
Right.
And they find it useful to organize their tags by page in a container tag.
Yep.
Right. So they'll create an article and call it article page 1.
Right.
And then another one, article page 2. Listen, if that helps you, do it. There's nothing wrong with doing that, Well,
I think there's a clarification though. When we create a section tag or a part tag or an article tag, that is the only thing you can name those. They have to be article, section, part, div, whatever. That's their name. The title can be chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3. So in your tags tree, those container tags have a name, but you can use that title kind of as notes for yourself, just like you were saying, to know where you are in that tags tree to help you.
Yeah. And if I may not have explained that very well, so thanks for clarifying that, because you're right. You can't create a tag and call it whatever you want. It's got to be called article or part or section. But here's a little tip, right? I mean, to add the title property, you can right click on an article and choose properties, and then enter the value in the title field.
Right.
However, an easier way to do that is to just rename the tag, put your cursor at the end of the tag and type a space, and then whatever you want the title to be.
I will one up you, Chad.
You're going to one up me.
I am. If you simply go to rename the tag and you don't you don't navigate to anything, just literally type over the entire name with whatever you want to call it, chapter 2, and hit enter, it automatically assigns it as the title. You don't have to click to the end of your section tag and then add a space and then type in, chapter 1. If you just rename the whole thing, it's all highlighted in blue, and you just type chapter 1 and hit enter, it ignores the fact that it's a section tag or whatever, and it just adds that value as the title.
You sneaky dog, you. I just learned something. I did not know that because I thought it would have. Okay, that makes sense. So as long as you don't type the open bracket or the less than sign, right? If you type the less than sign, that's going to be the tag name. But if you just type whatever you want the title to be, it'll keep the tag name and add that to the title. That is cool, buddy. I learned something.
For everybody listening, you can't see Chad, but as soon as I started talking, Chad immediately turned to his computer and was like, nope, that's not going to be right. I'm going to check it. And he checked it. And of course, it is right.
Like,
so
son
I'm
of a
not
gun.
always right, but most of the time I'm pretty close.
In my head, I was like, Dax, you're a damn liar.
Yep.
And then I tried it, and I'm like, son of a gun.
Yep.
He's right. It works. That's a really cool trick. I love it.
Well, on that same topic, another time-saving tool for renaming tags is that if you just start with let's just say you want to name something H1, right? So if you start, you rename that tag, you got your cursor in there, you type your left bracket H1, capital H, number 1, you don't have to hit the right bracket. You just press enter and it will automatically add that right bracket. Now it's a small little thing. It's just, but it saves a little bit of time, right?
I do it all the time. Like, you don't have to close the tag. It will close it for you. So that's super helpful to know.
Yeah.
Awesome. And as a reminder, Chax Training and Consulting is going to be at CSUN this year.
Next week, Chad. We're going to be there next week. One more week. Literally this Saturday, Sunday, I guess, we're getting on a plane, packing up our entire booth and our swag and our stuff and our class material. And we're heading down to Anaheim, and we're going to go to Disneyland no, maybe. I wish we were going to Disneyland. Literally, we're right next door. You can see Disneyland from our hotel room, but yet we never get to go. So,
No, all work, no play.
My wife would kill me if I went to Disneyland without her, Chad. She would literally, so even if we had the time, it's not really an option.
So we're going to be at CSUN, and if you're going to be there, please stop by. We're going to have a booth there. And Dax and I are both going to be there. We're also going to do a podcast at CSUN, right? Yep. So CSUN is doing kind of a podcast day, if you will. And they asked us if we wanted to record an episode of our podcast live at CSUN. So
WebAble TV is going to be hosting the podcast, which is great. That's a really awesome thing. So we're excited about being a part of their thing. So.
And if you don't know WebAble TV, Dax and my really good friend, Mike Paciello, runs WebAble TV. And of course, Mike is going to be there, right? I'm sure. I didn't check, but I wouldn't be surprised if he's doing the keynote for the conference. But
he is, because last year he had a little bit of a he did what all of us have done, most of us have done, right? He caught the big C and was not able to do the keynote. So this year, my understanding is he is doing the keynote, and we're excited to hear what he has to say. Always a great speaker. Really love talking with him, and couldn't be happier that he is. They've called him back to do that keynote. So
absolutely, yeah. Mike's a great guy, and we're looking forward to seeing him. So just remember, if you're looking for in-person or online training, or struggling to establish an accessibility program within your organization, head on over to accessibilityunraveled.com to learn more. My name is Chad Chilius.
And my name is Dax Castro, where each week we unravel accessibility for you.
Thanks, guys.